I'm joined now by the founder and executive chair of Democracy Defenders Fund, Norm Eisen. Norm, there is news that just broke about you and your organization that I can't believe I didn't even think of as it relates to Epstein. Can you explain the avenue that you're taking to compel the release of the Epstein files, in addition to what we've seen in Congress?
Thanks for having me back, Brian. There's no more important topic right now than the connection between Donald Trump and Epstein. And for that reason, we have filed Freedom of Information Act requests. There's a law, FOIA. It requires the government to turn over information. So we've filed urgent requests. We want to see all of the Epstein files, but in particular, the information about Donald Trump's relationship to Epstein. It matters in its own right, but also we want to know, has there been a cover up and who's involved in that cover up?
I kind of can't believe I didn't think of this, because we had been focused on getting Congress to compel the release of these files. And of course, the Trump administration is saying that they need to get grand jury testimony that judges never had the authority to unseal. But I never thought of the FOIA avenue, which I guess raises the next question: is what material is subject to FOIA release, and what material can the government continue to conceal that isn't applicable for release under Freedom of Information Act requests?
Well, there's a broad presumption that information should be released under FOIA when it's a matter of urgent public interest. As this is, you've got to do it quickly. You have a right under the statute to what they call expedited treatment, fast treatment. Normally, there are exclusions, for example, for law enforcement material. But Brian, this is why it occurred to me to do this. The government themselves said the most sensitive law enforcement information we have, grand jury information, must be released as a matter of public interest. The moment the government filed to release Epstein grand jury material, I took that page and I quote that page where they say this must be released. Look, the number two at DOJ is running to interview
Right.
Ghislaine Maxwell in person. Don't all Americans have a right to know what's in these files, and in particular, Trump Epstein contacts? So that was what caused the light bulb to go off for me when the government said material must be released. That establishes an exception to the usual rule about law enforcement materials.
Right. So, and the irony of that is that that was their pretext to be able to engage in this grand jury testimony, wild goose chase, knowing full well that a judge wouldn't have the authority because of secrecy rules, 6E secrecy rules, wouldn't have the authority to actually release the grand jury testimonies. And so this was all just, I mean, they did this under the guise of transparency, knowing full well that it would never work. But the irony of that is that now they inadvertently gave you the excuse that you would need to be able to get this stuff released through FOIA, because now you can point to their own words, words that they propped up through what they knew would be a doomed effort, but now it can actually lend itself to getting those materials released through FOIA.
Yeah, they are engaged in a kind of sham transparency.
Right.
You know, whether it's with these grand jury materials because they don't think the judge will do it. By the way, it's very cruel to the victims. That's why we have done narrowly focused requests. We want the Trump Epstein information. We have the greatest respect for the victims. Trump and his enablers over at DOJ are just running roughshod over all that. There's even speculation of pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, who was found guilty of the worst crimes. And then,
Right.
in terms of DOJ trying to get her to testify, Brian, she's been found to be a liar. DOJ themselves filed in her case saying she's not honest, she's not reliable.
Right.
So that just smacks of a cover up. Todd Blanche going over there and talking to her in her jail. So we think that the documents about Trump and Epstein, the Trump Epstein files, are of the utmost public interest. They must be released.
Okay, so let's talk about the mechanics of this thing. Who does the request go to? Who is the adjudicator here in terms of whether or not your request will be approved?
The request goes to multiple places across the federal government, the DOJ, the FBI, the Executive Office of U.S. Attorneys, many others who we believe are holding these documents. And we've done two waves of requests. We did the first wave demanding the Trump Epstein files, and then come to learn there's press reporting that DOJ told Donald Trump he's in these files. So
Right.
that corroborated the existence. So today, breaking news, this is my actual first appearance talking about this. We demanded all the documents about the handling of the Trump Epstein files, the disclosure to Donald Trump, and the withholding, including what was the involvement of Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, senior DOJ officials, and Emil Bove, who's been nominated for a Third Circuit, a lifetime judicial appointment, Trump's former defense lawyer with Todd Blanche, including in the New York case where there were more than 30 criminal convictions. Well, when you have your former defense lawyers who are running the process, that raises questions. Are we getting an independent process here, or are they turning the whole government inside out to hide information about their boss, Donald Trump?
Well, all of this kind of lends itself to this question, which is if Trump is not willing, and by extension Pam Bondi, but Trump is running the show here. If Trump is not willing to release these files and instead is sending everybody on these wild goose chases, to like the unsealed grand jury testimony that he knows won't be unsealed, going every other way except for just releasing the files. Why would his agencies, when hit with this FOIA request, approve these requests knowing full well that their goal, as far as Trump is concerned, is to never let these things see the light of day?
Well, first of all those people need to follow the law. So they could be in very serious trouble. There will be a day after Donald Trump when they could be in very serious trouble if they break the law, if they hide documents. That's even can lead to criminal liability for them. That's point number one. Point number two, you don't have to count on the good faith of these officials because in their wisdom, the drafters of the Freedom of Information Act gave you a litigation remedy. And Brian, I never miss a chance to go to court. So if they don't give us the documents, which we now know exist, we're prepared to litigate. Number three, my colleagues believe that our first set of FOIA requests last week kind of smoked out, helped get the revelation that there are Trump Epstein files. So clearly there's some within government. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal, big exclusive, that these files do exist, that Trump was informed about them. Some within the government clearly are sympathetic. They didn't want these files to be deep six. We filed our FOIA request. Next thing you knew, there were these stories. So perhaps we smoked them out. My experience has been that it's very hard to hide these kinds of documents once the world knows they exist. Remember, there's talk in Congress now about bipartisan efforts to get some of this information. There are state officials who have jurisdiction over where there were state offenses. And Donald Trump has publicly acknowledged that he was pals with Epstein for many years and that he knew Epstein liked younger women. He said it publicly. So I don't think you're going to be able to hide this information forever. It's the underlying information and the cover up. People don't like a cover up. That's why this is the scandal that won't go away. If I may add one more point, it's a scandal that epitomizes the corruption of the Trump administration, whether it's his obscene attacks on migrants, illegally abducting them to dark site prisons, whether it's his crypto fortune that he's making from a business he's supposed to be regulating. or whether it's any of the other Trump misconduct, Brian, the big brutal betrayal bill, they're all about the same corruption theme that Donald Trump pals around with his rich and powerful cronies, and the most vulnerable people in our country get injured. And that's the theme here of
Yeah.
Trump's friendship with Epstein, even acknowledging Epstein's predilection for younger women. My God, we've got to get these documents.
So I'm especially interested in what you mentioned about the litigation remedy. So if you have administration officials who opt to defy the law, which, by the way, to your exact point, opens them up to legal exposure personally, criminally, but beyond that, we also have the opportunity then to remedy this in the courts. And so could there be a situation where, okay, you've got administration officials who continue to secrete, continue to conceal these files, but you can have a judge say, no, this is a valid FOIA request. You do have to release the Epstein files. Is that what could happen here?
Absolutely so. I've participated in many of the important FOIA cases in the DC circuit, where many of these cases get litigated in DC. And we've seen over and over again over the decades and in recent months that courts have ordered the government to engage in the FOIA process. So if we must, we're prepared to litigate this matter. We're going to fight for it. We're looking at a lot of other legal remedies as well, because the Trump Epstein scandal epitomizes the corruption of the Trump regime. This is one in our over 100 legal matters at the Democracy Defenders Fund. This is one that's particularly important, and we're not letting up.
And finally, you had mentioned that when you deal with Freedom of Information Act requests, that speed is obviously of the utmost importance here. And so if this thing gets denied by the administration and has to go through the judicial route for some type of litigation remedy, is there the same urgency to have this thing move quickly in the same way that FOIA requests have to be acted on quickly? So will we see this thing move through the courts at a speedy process?
In a majority of the cases, many cases that we've prosecuted in court, we've been able to get emergency relief. We did that to stop the president's elections executive order from disadvantaging those who vote against him. We did it in cases involving government agencies like AmeriCorps, where we got those AmeriCorps workers restored. Across the board, we have been able to get this kind of speed. Perhaps the best example was the birthright citizenship case, Brian. We were the first to go to court with our partners. We got a class certified in about 10 days and a preliminary injunction stopping the president's heinous deprivation of birthright citizenship from some babies born here. We're prepared to move equally quickly here if necessary. And we urge the government, some of those FOIA officers are probably watching. We urge you, turn the Trump Epstein documents over as is legally required. If not, see you in court.
Well, Norm, as I always say when I speak to you, I'm beyond happy to give a platform to the people who are out there fighting, and nobody exemplifies that more than you and the team at Democracy Defenders Fund. So highly recommend for anybody who's looking to support their work. These are the fighters. These are the guys in the front lines. These are the guys in the courts blocking the Trump administration from allowing their worst impulses to move forward. So I'm going to put a link to Democracy Defenders Fund right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video if anybody wants to support them. Clearly, it is a good cause and worthy of support. Norm, as always, I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Brian.